Morning, guys. This is going to be another relatively quick update, I hope. There's still not really that much going on. I've posted a couple of posts on TradingView. I'm still busy in terms of renovations on the property, so I'm kind of away from the charts, but kind of keeping an eye on it every now and again. I think what I have seen and what I've been asked over the last couple of days really is that there's a lot of social media influences. Twitter has been kind of calling for new lows and is this death to crypto? Guys, for the last year, I've explained this over and over again. You got people like Carl and MMC, BitBoy. These guys are marketers. These guys are not traders. What they're actually doing is just giving you a Bybit link and hoping you click on it, right? And it's just a pure numbers game, right? Now, also, I get a lot of questions about Plan B and this model. When you're 90K off a high and the expectations of 135K back in November or December last year, it's just the same as going for a major heart operation and coming out with a hip replacement, right? This is how bad these guys are at doing what they're doing, right? So, in terms of where we are, you have to understand what Composite Man is trying to do is play the game, right? This guy's got an awful lot of patience and very, very deep pockets. Now, this is something that can be dragged out for an awful long time. And although a lot of retail don't want to admit this, they don't want to see this, they kind of flip their opinions almost to the extremes. There's almost nothing in between. So, when Bitcoin was moving on up, everybody was calling for the moons. It was like I said, Zeus 1 million in Q1 2022. You had Carl saying 300 grand, 100 grand is only half of 50. We'll get there. I think the trouble being now we've actually had this major drop. They call in for, a complete annihilation of Bitcoin. And I think this is what the whole composite man scenario is designed to do, right? So let's look at first of all where we were, back a year when we were on this move up, and why I was calling this distribution back down then ultimately for the drop. So if we look at from there, right? We had the rocket call and we had the targets, and that was actually mapped out in the roadmap, right? So I'm going to come back to the roadmap. I'll just show one of the last updates. You could see the 3, 4, and 5, right? Now, we've done exactly that. We had the 3, we had the 4, we had the 5. This was truncated, and we've come on down from there, right? Which takes us then into the larger scale monthly 3 to 4, right? Now, what I've mentioned in the last couple of streams and what I talk about, especially in the Discord group, is the levels are becoming very, very accurate, right? This goes back March last year, right? In terms of the levels, the institutionalization of Bitcoin, it's becoming a professional instrument. And Composite Man is playing the game. He's offsetting the rallies for the profit taking mode that he's playing, and then using these drops for that reaccumulation on a much, much bigger time frame, right? And this is why I'm saying these guys have big, big pockets, right? Deep, deep pockets. If you look at the levels and you start to understand what we're doing within these levels, I'm going to zoom in on this, right? Again, this 24th of August last year, you could see why we were likely to get this truncation on the 5th. And that was actually the weekly 5th, monthly 3. It was just the profit taking phase was so vast and so much in terms of a holding that they are keen to take it off. Now, you might think this is kind of counterintuitive. It's, well, if you've got so many millions of Bitcoin, why not hold it and run this to the moon? Institutional players don't think like that. For these guys, it's a 10%, a 20%, a 30% return in a period of time, right? And it's all to do with bonuses, selling off, profiting to actually go again, right? And these guys are buying private jets with their bonuses, right? So you have to understand this isn't the buy and hold strategy for Bitcoin. This is actually trading Bitcoin, right? So if you look at where we are and what we've done basically the monthly move on down, right? So we've had this one, the 3, and we currently potentially still with the 4. We got a false bar stochastic, right? Which means it's probably still likely to kind of grind on sideways or slightly down rather than a big impulsive move up, right? So the next option is whether or not this is actually an ABC move, right? Or if we're still part of a larger A move, and you have to keep in mind this is a monthly. So we should be looking at the weekly chart in terms of the actual validation on this. Now, after a large scale move, and you have to consider this move up a large scale move, at least 70% of the time, you'll be looking at a zigzag type move rather than a flat or anything else, right? Now, it doesn't have to be, and it isn't always, but it's just a high probability you're likely to see this after a large scale impulsive move, right? Now, if we were to assume that this isn't part of the zigzag move, because personally on the daily time frame you can clearly see there's a 1, a 2, or an A, a B, a C, a D, and an E coming in, right? Now, if we come into the weekly time frame, I'm going to stick the magnet on as well. Now, the other option you have is that ABC is in, right? Now, there's nothing to say that it needs to be. There's nothing to say that it doesn't need to be. And come from the top, we're going to come down to the swing low, 2 to the left, 2 to the right, and then ultimately back on it. And as you can see, we've only tagged the 618, right? So there's validation there that we could now go on up, right? And I quite like this for a B move. I like this B to come back up into liquidity. I've mentioned this again a couple of times over, understanding where the liquidity is sitting, okay? The liquidity is, again, composite man playing the game to entice retail in to take in the opposite position. And this is either for the profit taking of composite man or the accumulation to acquire more stock, more of the instrument in general, right? I press play on this and you'll see we moved on up into liquidity and then straight on through back into the liquidity zone to the downside where we're actually now accumulating in this as a position, right? Now, coming back to the chart, I personally don't feel that this is going to be a move on up that'll take us, beyond 100K in a move up. I'm still feeling, for me personally, this is the A. The B back into a liquidity pocket and another kind of fake up to the upside. This is designed to get people like Moon Carl calling for 300K all over again. This is going to be a new model for Plan B after the 2 previous models are put in the bin. Ultimately, you're going to see composite man playing the game, attracting newfound buyers to release the profits to go again to accumulate under the value area, right? We then have, what else have we got? So I've got a lot of these in terms of the educational content. I've put a lot of this stuff in TradingView, and you can actually go through all of these, or every single one of these individual posts. You can click on the posts and you'll actually see where and what we were doing, why it's doing what it's doing, right? So there's loads of information in there. You'll see this if you come into my profile, and there's a few others that I haven't included in this particular post. But in essence, understanding where we are, knowing what we're about to do, and knowing why we're doing what we're doing is going to give you a little bit of an edge in terms of the bigger picture, right? Now, if you look at this being an A or a C, all we're doing is accumulating on a smaller time frame in any circumstance, right? This is going to be a build up to take it up to the next area of liquidity, right? Now, I've posted, again, in TradingView, I've posted a couple of these different things. And one of the last posts was Bitcoin's becoming more fun. You'll actually see some of the key levels, and this goes back like October last year. You can actually see some of the key levels and why they're actually important, right? We've tagged some of these levels again back October last year, the Elliott forecast, where we were, why we were going, where we were going. You can see just around that 68k level there, why we were likely to tag that up. We've done exactly that, the before and after, and therefore it's definitely becoming an awful lot more institutionalized. You can see again October why this was distribution rather than reaccumulation. Just understanding why we were doing what we were doing is going to, like I said, give you that little bit of an edge in terms of where we go next. Okay, so I've covered, like I said, loads of this. Now, this one for me is really interesting, right? The levels that we see on this chart were likely to be used again, and understanding that we were in the redistribution phase in and around the 40k level where we were, you can see on the 9 moving on up, moving across this level, and using this almost as the support resistance. This was the redistribution. This was good profit taking in terms of composite man all over again. But this is where the excitement for retail set in. This was, we're going to see 100k, 50k is only half of 100. This was the kind of mentality that these guys were, I suppose, using. This was the logic that they were deploying. What we've done is we've just fallen down, right? And you'll see this again. This was, back in March, this particular post. I'd posted this image back in November last year, right? If I come on in to this and I put these back on to the screen, daily night angles, you can see all we done. Once we broke to the downside, once we broke to the downside of that support resistance level, we've come on down and we've sat on top of the next level, knowing full well that there was liquidity there. There's going to be an awful lot of stops, some profit taking, etc., etc., creating the auction zone for us now to start that move up. Now, the one thing that I don't like about this current move is that usually when you have a B type move from a larger scale pattern, it tends to look a little bit more impulsive. And the reason for that being impulsive is, again, to kind of trap the retail traders into believing this is about to go to the moon. Okay, so we're not doing anything different. We're not doing anything exciting. This is doing what it's doing right now. This has been mapped out for over a year, right? We've talked about this, multiple ways. Paul is doing daily streams. I'm doing this, I suppose, ad hoc at the moment. It's just kind of boring in terms of Bitcoin as a move right now. I'm not into the social media. Hey, let's plug this and let's plug that. I think overall, this is just kind of giving the education, trying to get you guys to understand where we are in the overall roadmap, and then using that, like I said, to your advantage to trade it on the time frames that you're looking for. So if you're looking for, do you buy or sell this right now? I still feel that we're quite flat. So for me, this is range bound on the larger time frame, right? And like I said, this is monthly fall, right? Regardless of whether it's the A, B, or C, it's the monthly fall. We are accumulating in a smaller time frame, right? And I'm coming kind of sub daily. So at that point, I'd probably be favoring the buy side rather than the sell side, but it's not a position I personally would like to take just yet. I'd be looking for the Wyckoff schematics on the smaller time frames. I'm talking, maybe 4 hours, even up to 12 hours potentially. I'm just kind of taking that with, I suppose, low risk, high probability type entries with a view of not being too greedy. Okay, scaling in, trailing stop losses, etc., etc. That will give you a little bit, like I said, of an edge in terms of where and why, what we do, where we go from here. Okay, so like I said, it's a shorter kind of update, but obviously, I think all I'm getting right now in terms of comments and questions and so on is, all these social media influencers are saying, it's up, down, it's up, down, it's up, down. Oh, look, they're right. The reality is, guys, when you're 90k off, like I said earlier, it's like going into hospital, for a heart transplant and coming out with a hip replacement. I think the trouble being is it's so far out, it's ridiculous. I think if you just follow the roadmap, life would be so much more simple. Life would be so much more enjoyable, more pleasurable in terms of what you do daily. You don't need to be in front of the screen right now. These candles are not doing much. The story is playing itself out. Just take a little bit of time, reassess, reanalyze, and go again. Okay. So I'm going to leave it where we are right now and enjoy the rest of this week. Cheers for watching. Thanks, guys.